Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to bring Bob Oliva, Roberto Oliva, but we all knew him as Bob Oliva. Bob was a lot of things in the Miami Herald. Just to set the context, the Miami Herald was not only the leading newspaper in Miami, of course, but a behemoth. They won, I don't know how many Pulitzer Awards. It was a major newspaper with, like 500,000 circulation daily. So Bob not only did sales for the Miami Herald, he handled the international edition, which was one of the key international newspapers that we had in Miami for a long time. Then more stuff, including special projects, sponsorships, the entire gamut. At some point, and he'll talk about it, the newspaper industry got, I don't know, beat up by a lot of the digital technologies of the day. Bob had a very successful consulting, and today he is doing what a lot of us should be doing and we're not, which is volunteering to improve the world. So, and a lot of us should be doing that. A lot of us are not, but we hope. But Bob is actually doing it. So, Bob, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. Bob is in beautiful Mount Dora, somewhere out there in the middle of somewhere. I have no clue. I don't. I'm a city guy, but I've heard from everybody actually that it is beautiful. Not only you, from a lot of people who've been there, I've heard that it is absolutely beautiful. So congratulations, and let's dive right in. A guy like you, I mean, you went through tons of the stuff that was making the Miami international scene the scene. But everybody has like one decisive, two decisive moments that change us. Normally, we don't even know it happened until we look back and we say, "Wow, that happened." So, tell us, how do you what made Bob Oliva Bob Oliva?
Okay. What made me was very early in life. I was born in Cuba, and my dad was a business guy. He owned grocery stores and hardware stores. And when Fidel Castro took over, um, he brought in the communists, and basically they wanted to confiscate all the businesses. So what Fidel Castro did very early on was anybody that was 13 years old now was military age. Anybody from 8 to 12 they were going to send to Russia to be indoctrinated. So, of course, I was in a Jesuit school, Maris Academy for Maritas, and the State Department in the U.S. with the Catholic Church established a visa for to get the kids out of Cuba. So 15,000 kids came with a program called Peter Pan,
Oh
which I
yes.
was one of those 15,000 kids. So the Catholic Church would house these kids, well, me one of them, in orphanages around the U.S. I was supposed to go to an orphanage, but an uncle of mine picked me up after 2 weeks, and I went to live with him. So that experience at the age of 11 years old sort of said, your life is going to be disruptive. It's going to be non-linear. So you have to just roll with the punches. So at an early age, I learned that I could just bounce with whatever came my way, and I had to survive. So from my schooling, where I had like 400 credits, uh, to my profession, where I went from um, uh, the media to spend 2 years on Wall Street, to then eventually landing at the Miami Herald. Um, it just made me sort of very flexible in my mind. I was not afraid to step out of the box. And in the newspaper industry, I could see that it was doing great. We were doing well. We had a corporate apartment at Beekman Towers in New York where we would stay there and I would visit all the clients and I would just sign contracts, $1 million contracts. and it was so easy that we really were the media for every community around the U.S. Um, what happened then, and you and I talked about this many times, was that Craigslist came along, and Craigslist was the best thing that ever happened to the internet early on, late 90s. And what we saw was the classifieds all of a sudden started going to Craigslist. And it was really the beginning of the end, as we know it now, for the print newspaper. Because once the classifieds, which make up 50% of the newspaper revenue, once you lose that, then you're going from a company, let's say, that was $300 million in one market down to maybe $50 million. That's a race to the bottom. You have to adjust the whole business model. How do you
Yep.
do that? It's really hard to do as you're trending down. So I was no doubt that the newspaper industry was going to take a hit. It was already hurting and was going to, right now I'm just guessing some of the, regional newspapers are maybe $30 million a year, maybe. As far as the
Maybe.
international edition, the same thing happened because we were the best newspaper in Latin America. And as far as the international edition, the same thing happened again. When you traveled, it was easier for you to go now to a website to check your local newspaper. If you are from Spain, you would go to El País. If you are from
Yep.
Chile, you would go to El Mercurio.
Yep.
So you really didn't need that hard copy in the mornings. You would just have your breakfast, go to your phone, and read whatever newspaper you wanted to do on your phone. So
So
the,
if we look at the newspaper industry itself, the newspaper industry has gone through like so many changes and so many useless people at the top, to be honest. So many mediocre people. But I remember, yes, the International Miami Herald for one. Absolutely. I mean, like, we all read it, period. Then, yes, the newspapers came along. But I still remember even going to, like upscale hotels in New York, whatever. I'm not gonna name names, but like expensive stuff that your CFO would look at and say, like, do you really need to stay
that's
there?
right.
Really? Seriously?
That's right.
But it was delivered to our doors every morning, like photocopies of, like the top news of the day or something like that in like real paper, photocopied in a photocopy machine. And, even terrible. The head of Food Cotton Building in Asia, Ben Barnes, he had his assistant, that was the paper culture. He had his assistant print out emails so he could read them and then, write on the notes as to what he wanted to do, right? Craigslist absolutely came along and a lot of us absolutely loved it. I mean, like, I bought I bought a motorcycle in Craigslist. I actually did. I went over, looked at stuff, and then I bought a Ninja 600ZX right out of Craigslist. I still use it. I buy used lenses out of Craigslist. I mean, they really revolutionized
Oh,
the
good.
that part of the newspaper. But the newspaper industry also had a lot of sales hiccups along the way. I remember a presentation that you made to like the management in the Miami Herald, where I proposed two things of which they never did. One of them was the creation of like a national or statewide consortium of newspapers, so you can basically sell it as television. You get this
Right.
many impressions.
That's right.
And also, I remember telling them, you guys should sell advertising not on a circulation basis, but on the influence that you have over major decisions, which used to be enormous. Like, you wouldn't build anything big without reading, an advertising in the Miami Herald.
Right.
It would be unheard of. And now, of course, nobody does.
Right.
And then they also wasted Miami.com. They could have had, like the fantastic, super duper entertainment, thing in South Florida. Right now, it's nothing. Miami.com is a wasted name. It's probably worth more as a name than as anything, and I can see somebody selling it later on. So we've been through many of them. What change did really hurt you, and what did you do about it?
When the Miami Herald said, and at that time I was pretty much concentrating on the international edition, and we were growing. We were up to like 60,000 copies in all the markets in Latin America, and everything was going well. Then all of a sudden, we could see the trend coming down because at that point, it was, I like to say, it was '05 or 06. Um, we could tell that now the business people were going to their phones, they were not picking up the newspaper anymore at the hotel. So once the hotel started canceling our newspapers, our copies, our audience started shrinking, then obviously now we could tell there was a change in the whole market. So the Herald came to us and said, "We got to get this off the books. We cannot carry the international edition anymore in the P&L." So we said, "Okay." So there are three of us running this whole operation. So we said, "I tell you what." We went back to management. We said, "We will incorporate. We will create an LLC, Herald International Media Group. We have the right to publish the newspaper, and you take it off the books. It's ours now." And they accepted. And so we
Wow.
created the International Media Group, and we ran with the Herald International Edition from, I like to say, from '07 or 08 to like 10. And then at that point, it became clear that we needed the rights to the website. We needed the right to create a URL that we can go to and sort of send people to this URL to monetize the paper product. At that point, Night Raider was sold, which was it was really McClatchy. McClatchy then became uh, sort of territorial and said, "No, you can't have it." And at that point, I knew that okay, this is not going to work. I could see the handwriting on the wall, just like I saw it when Craigslist came about in the late '90s. I said, I got to make a change. So I created my consulting firm, or America's Group, and that's the Herald still hired me. They needed my help in several projects.
Yep.
As you remember, we created the Americas Conference, which was extremely
Yeah.
successful. We will fly in three presidents from Latin America every year. And I mean, that was all Alberto Bargman. Alberto Bargman, who you met, I had him one time as a speaker. He was a very dynamic, he's a very high level executive. And he made that happen. And we were able to monetize the international edition through the Americas Conference.
Wow.
But then once that went down and didn't happen, it was canceled. So then we had to move on. I created my consulting firm, and then it was good. We were working full time, had great clients. I don't want to mention some of them, but I had great clients. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, it was like we have to make a decision here. So this place was to our getaway place. And my wife and I said, well, you know what? Let's get away from Miami for like a year or two and see what happens. Well, we liked it so much that
I don't blame you.
this is it. We're going to stay here. So last year we sold our place in Miami, and here we are full time, and now we're doing volunteer work, just trying to save.
I I don't blame you. Miami, and I moved to Miami in '79, but then I moved away right away. Right away, I went to live in the Dominican Republic. But I've been living on and off in Miami since the '80s, and I lived in Coral Gables on and off, like around, like we started building the house like around 2006 or something like that, maybe 2007. So almost 20 years. And it has become hard to live in Miami. Not only on the formal aspect, of course, the housing is absolutely unaffordable. Um, I can't believe what some of my neighbors are selling for. But on the flippant side, the traffic has become really awful. I mean, I looked at the it was nasty. I looked at the speedometer and the trip odometers on my Alfa Romeo after 250 miles, which is the range that I get with the Alfa driving in the city. My average speed over 250 miles was 11 miles per hour. This is in an Italian sports car. It's driving at 11 miles per hour. So I don't blame you for moving out.
Well, but they have to do
It's one of
something.
those things.
Marcelo, they have to like the problem with Miami is great when you have all these luxury high rises going up, right, east of the highway, and everything is east of the highway. That Edgewater neighborhood is going crazy, and you're
Yeah,
building these 60-story towers, which the density is going up 10 times exponentially. But you have to do something about the roads. And the problem with Miami is they haven't done anything about the roads while the population is just booming. So you have three times more cars on the road. I'm afraid they may have to do what Mexico City did, which is do double deckers on the freeways. Um,
well,
because I mean,
I think they're going there.
they have to do something. I-95 is it's crazy. They're gonna have to probably do a double decker on I-95.
Yeah, I 95 is ridiculous. So I don't blame you for moving to Mount Dora. Actually, my daughter moved to St. Petersburg because they just couldn't afford Miami anymore. It was that bad. So she and her boyfriend, they have a house now in St. Petersburg, little house, starter house. But it's becoming very, very tough for young people. Talking about giving people suggestions and giving people, like good advice. My my favorite question, and short, deadly. You are the consigliere, the trusted guy for a CEO or a CMO. They're interviewing all sorts of candidates for, like a high position, directors, VP, something like that. And, they have people from many ages, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. What do you tell that CEO? Why would that CEO hire, or that CMO hire a 55-year-old? What one of the members of our board calls POA, people of age. So it's a great acronym, by the way.
That's a very good one.
Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna get a logo for it and
We'll keep
everything.
that one. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. Everybody should use POA.
POA.
So, what do you tell the CEO or the CMO about POAs? Why are they
Pilot.
valuable?
Um, well, first of all, the experience that anybody has stored, if you will. We're like a chip, right? You store all the information in the chip. You're hiring that person according to all that information that they have stored, all that knowledge that they have stored. I know that, and you and I were talking about that before, is that AI is great. Everybody's talking about AI. Um, but AI, I think it's going to be a slow process. It's not, it will be impossible for AI to become what people are expecting AI to be. Eventually, it might get there, just like just like the internet. When I left a Herald for like a year to learn the internet, and went over to UP where a bunch of my guys were there, just burning money like no tomorrow. And eventually, we could tell the handwriting was on the wall, and we are like, "This is great. I mean, we're bringing this money in, but is the ROI is -10." So, so we knew, you didn't have to be a brain trust to know what was going on. But I think you need to hire somebody that not only can break the box, but live outside of the box, and somebody that has a number of information already stored in them so that they can apply that information to whatever they're going to do. And I think the attitude of that person is extremely important because today you have so much information coming at you from so many different directions. that you have to apply that information to get almost anything done. So it's not as simple as it used to be, but
Yeah,
you
that's
still have to hire the person with the right attitude and the right amount of information and be able to grasp the new information to move forward. Because I mean, it's all about the new information coming now. I mean, you can bring
but it's a very keen observation. It's a very good one where age gives you the ability to integrate all of the information coming in and have a base because we do have a lot of experience and a lot of stored information. So our ability to integrate all sorts of data streams is way higher.
well, but you history is part of everything that we do, right? I cannot ignore the first years of my life. The first 7 years of your life pretty much sort of mold you going forward. 7, 10, 12 years, whatever it might be. So you can't ignore that. The history of you as a person is part of you. So when you hire somebody, you want to see everything that they've gathered in their. Have they worked in an agency? Have they worked on the retail side? How many different levels of marketing have they worked on, or whatever the career may be, so that you can sort of hire the right person and then provide that person with the right information that person will need to have in order to make good decisions. Because you cannot make good decisions if you don't have the right information in front of you. And I think that's vital nowadays. You really need good information to make good decisions.
Great. Well, that's great. I love it. Thank you very much for that. And Bob, again, thank you. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I hadn't seen you in a bit. I'm so glad you're doing well. I saw your postings about your trips and everything. I envy that. So
It was good. It was
big hug, man.
Thank you.
Keep well in Mount Dora. Who knows? It might at some point we might even take a trip up. The Great White North or something. Like to me, that's like Canada far away.
If I have the courage to drive down to Miami soon, I will give you a call.
And then I will buy you lunch,
That's a
definitely.
deal.
Okay, man.
All right.
Nos vemos.
Abrazo.
Ciao.
Take care.